In the 1980s, science fiction movies didn't just entertain. They ignited panic, sparked police raids, and challenged the very idea of free expression. As home video swept through the UK, authorities created the notorious Video Nasty List, banning films like Extro and Turkey Shoot for imagery so disturbing that tapes were confiscated from living rooms in midnight raids. But beyond the blood and controversy, these were more than movies. They were threats to powerful institutions. Why did entire governments go to war against sci-fi? The most banned 80s movies are hiding stories of censorship, subversion, and rebellion most fans have never heard. The real question: what were they so afraid you might see next? Extro, 1982. Released at the height of Britain's video panic, this low-budget shocker became a lightning rod for everything authorities feared about home video. Directed by Harry Bromley Davenport, Extro opens with a father abducted by aliens and returns 3 years later, only to impregnate his wife with a monstrous, fast-growing creature. The infamous alien birth scene, complete with writhing tentacles and graphic body horror, landed Extro on the UK's Department of Public Prosecution's list, the so-called Video Nasties. Police seized tapes from video shops and private homes under the Obscene Publications Act. For more than a decade, from 1982 until 1993, Extro's uncut version was illegal to own or distribute in the UK. Shopkeepers risked prosecution just for keeping it on the shelf. The British Board of Film Classification refused to grant a certificate, and the film's name appeared in tabloid headlines as moral campaigners called for tougher laws. Meanwhile, rumors of midnight raids and confiscations only fueled the legend, as collectors traded battered VHS copies in secret. Extro wasn't the work of a major studio. Its budget barely scraped together enough for practical effects and cheap London locations. But what it lacked in polish, it made up for in sheer audacity. The aliens' grotesque transformations, a man giving birth, a child weaponized by extraterrestrial powers, pushed boundaries that even established horror directors wouldn't cross. British censors called the film depraved and corrupting, while defenders argued it was just another wild B-movie, no more dangerous than a pulp novel. The ban didn't kill Extro, it gave it a second life. In the years it spent underground, the film gained a cult following that stretched from London to Melbourne. Fans organized secret screenings, swapped bootleg tapes, and debated which version was the most uncut. When the ban finally lifted in 1993, critics revisited Extro and found a film that was less a threat to society than a strange, disturbing time capsule of 1980s anxieties. For those who lived through the era, Extro remains a symbol of just how far censors would go to keep certain images out of sight, and how eager fans were to see what all the fuss was about. Turkey Shoot, 1982. Released in Australia under the title Escape 2000, this dystopian shocker quickly became a symbol of everything censors wanted to stamp out. Directed by Brian Trenchard Smith, the film thrusts viewers into a totalitarian future where political prisoners are hunted for sport. Its blend of over-the-top violence and campy exploitation was designed for the drive-in circuit, but what played as outrageous fun for some audiences triggered a wave of official outrage for others. Australian authorities refused to let Turkey Shoot screen uncut. Before it even reached theaters, government censors demanded more than 10 minutes of footage be removed, scenes of torture, mutilation, and sadistic games that pushed the film's R rating to its breaking point. The result was a patchwork release, with some prints so heavily edited that entire plot points vanished. Even with the cuts, critics called the film depraved and gratuitous, fueling headlines that warned of cinema's moral collapse. The United Kingdom proved even less forgiving. The British Board of Film Classification flatly refused Turkey Shoot a certificate, making it illegal for legal distribution or public screening. Labeled a video nasty, the film The film joined a growing blacklist that kept police busy raiding shops and seizing tapes. In New Zealand, censors pulled the film from theaters after a brief run, with officials citing fears of copycat violence and a breakdown of public decency. Yet, the attempts to bury Turkey Shoot only gave it a new kind of fame. The film's reputation as forbidden fruit spread fast, and battered VHS copies traded hands at swap meets and late-night gatherings. Fans coined the term drive-in notoriety to describe movies like Turkey Shoot, films so outrageous, so frequently targeted by censors, that their underground status became part of the appeal. Ironically, the censorship panic turned Turkey Shoot into a cult legend. The more authorities tried to erase it, the more determined fans became to seek it out. In the years that followed, the film's notoriety crossed borders, inspiring bootleg screenings in the UK, Australia, and beyond. Today, Turkey Shoot stands as a reminder of an era when the fight over what could be shown on screen spilled out of the theaters and into the streets, leaving behind a legacy of moral panic, forbidden entertainment, and a global network of fans who refused to let the film disappear. The Thing, 1982. John Carpenter's Arctic horror wasn't just another monster movie. It was a mirror held up to a world on edge. In the shadow of the Cold War, with governments gripped by fear of infiltration and betrayal, Carpenter delivered a story where the enemy could be anyone, and trust was a luxury no one could afford. Set at an isolated Antarctic research station, the film follows a team of scientists as an alien parasite begins to imitate and replace them, one by one. Paranoia spreads faster than the infection, and suspicion turns colleagues into enemies. What set The Thing apart wasn't just its groundbreaking effects. Creature transformations so grotesque that audiences reportedly fainted in theaters, but its bleak refusal to offer hope. Every frame drips with suspicion, isolation, and a sense that humanity's greatest threat might be itself. Critics in 1982 recoiled from the film's relentless nihilism. In the United States, it flopped at the box office, dismissed as too grim for the era of E.T. But in Scandinavia, the reaction was even more severe. Finland and Norway banned The Thing from video release, with authorities citing not just the violence, but the film's overwhelming sense of despair and the way it shattered the illusion of safety among friends. In some regions, the ban lasted months. In others, the film quietly disappeared from shelves for years. This wasn't just about gore. Scandinavian censors argued that the movie's mood, its message that society can unravel from within, was too corrosive in a time when the threat of infiltration and collapse felt all too real. The Thing's vision of trust, evaporating in the cold, struck a nerve in countries already wary of outside influence and internal subversion. The film's arrival coincided with a period of heightened East-West suspicion, when stories of spies, defectors, and double agents dominated headlines. Carpenter's nightmare wasn't just science fiction. It was a reflection of the anxieties that haunted living rooms and news broadcasts across the globe. Yet, as the years passed, The Thing refused to stay buried. Bootleg copies circulated among horror fans, and word of mouth transformed it from a critical failure into a cult legend. By the late 1990s, critics who once panned the film now praised its craftsmanship and psychological depth. Today, The Thing is recognized not just as a landmark in practical effects, but as a chilling allegory for an era defined by suspicion. Its initial ban in Finland and Norway stands as proof that sometimes the most dangerous movies aren't the ones with the most blood. They're the ones that dare to say, in the end, you can't trust anyone. RoboCop, 1987. Paul Verhoeven's cyberpunk satire dropped into Reagan-era America like a live grenade, delivering a future Detroit ruled by corporations, chaos, and machines. The story follows Alex Murphy, a murdered cop resurrected as a robotic enforcer, unleashed on a city where justice is for sale and human life is cheap. What set RoboCop apart wasn't just its explosive violence, though there was plenty, but its gleeful mockery of corporate power and the American dream, all filtered through a lens of blood, steel, and dark humor. The real battle started long before RoboCop hit theaters. Verhoeven and his producers faced the MPAA's ratings board in a grueling 11-round slugfest. The original cut was so unflinching. Limbs blasted off, a boardroom executive riddled with bullets, the infamous toxic waste meltdown, that the MPAA slapped it with an X rating, reserved for pornography, and the most extreme violence. Each time Verhoeven trimmed a few seconds, the board sent it back, still unsatisfied. It took 11 submissions, each one slightly more sanitized, before RoboCop finally limped across the finish line with an R rating. Even then, the theatrical version was missing some of its most brutal and, according to fans, most honest moments. The irony was hard to miss. A film built to ridicule the excesses of American capitalism was being chopped up by the very system it mocked. Verhoeven, never one to back down, described the process as more painful than shooting the movie. He argued that the violence wasn't just for shock value, it was a pointed attack on the media, on corporate hypocrisy, and on the idea that a machine could enforce morality better than a human. But in 1987, Hollywood's censors weren't interested in satire. They wanted RoboCop to bleed less, shoot straighter, and keep his existential crisis off the screen. The list of casualties from the MPAA's scissors reads like a greatest hits of cinematic mayhem. The boardroom massacre, where the prototype robot ED-209 riddles an executive with gunfire, was trimmed to remove lingering shots of the body twitching. Murphy's execution, arguably the scene that defines his transformation, was cut to shorten the agony. The Melting Man, a grotesque victim of toxic waste, was reduced to a quick shot, robbing the sequence of its full horror. Fans who caught the uncut version on imported VHS tapes or, years later, on DVD, discovered a film that was sharper, meaner, and truer to Verhoeven's vision. RoboCop's struggle with the ratings board wasn't just about gore. It was a fight over who gets to define the boundaries of art and commerce in Hollywood. The MPAA's power to dictate what millions could see and what had to be hidden turned the film into a corporate battleground. Verhoeven's victory was partial. He got his R rating, but only after sacrificing some of the film's most biting moments. Yet, when the director's cut finally surfaced, critics and audiences praised its raw honesty, and RoboCop's reputation soared. Today, it stands as a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous movies aren't the ones that get banned outright. They're the ones that survive the censors, scars, and all. Brazil, 1985. Terry Gilliam's vision of a future strangled by bureaucracy and surveillance never stood a chance behind the Iron Curtain. In the Soviet bloc, films didn't have to be publicly banned to vanish. They simply weren't imported, left to gather dust on the far side of the censor's ledger. For censors in East Germany, Czechoslovakia, and the USSR, Brazil's portrait of a society crushed by paperwork and paranoia felt dangerously familiar. State film boards, wary of any Western allegory that might encourage dissent, refused to license or distribute the film. Official records don't list Brazil among the notorious banned titles, but its absence from cinemas spoke volumes. While Gilliam's dystopia played to packed art houses in Paris and London, Eastern European audiences could only imagine its world through rumor, or at best, a smuggled VHS. Unlike the cult classics that flooded the samizdat underground, action blockbusters, forbidden westerns, and the occasional Star Wars dub, Brazil remained an obscure legend, whispered about by cinephiles but rarely seen. The film's reputation as a subversive threat was built more on what it suggested than what it showed. In the eyes of party officials, even the chance of ideological contamination was too great a risk. Brazil's absence behind the Iron Curtain wasn't just a matter of taste, it was a calculated omission. By refusing to import or distribute Gilliam's film, authorities protected their own myth of order and control. The result was a different kind of ban, one enforced not by police raids or public trials, but by the silent erasure of anything that might make citizens question their reality. Decades later, when the walls finally fell, Brazil arrived not as a relic of Western rebellion, but as a long-lost warning from a world that understood the dangers of unchecked authority all too well. Terry Gilliam's war with Universal over the movie Brazil became the stuff of Hollywood legend. After delivering his 142-minute cut, a nightmarish vision of bureaucracy run wild, Gilliam watched as the studio locked it away, demanding a 94-minute version with a sanitized, happy ending. Sid Sheinberg, Universal's president, insisted that American audiences needed hope, not Gilliam's bleak satire. But Gilliam refused to surrender. He took out a full-page ad in Variety in 1985, pointedly asking, "Dear Sid Sheinberg, when are you going to release my film Brazil?" The ad ran without permission from his own publicist, a direct challenge that electrified the industry. Denied official screenings, Gilliam launched a guerrilla campaign. He organized secret showings of his director's cut for Los Angeles critics, slipping reels into private rooms and inviting the city's most influential voices. The gamble paid off. Critics from the Los Angeles Film Critics Association saw the full version and promptly named it Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Screenplay of the Year, awards that embarrassed Universal and made headlines across the country. The studio's position became untenable. With mounting public pressure and critical acclaim piling up, Universal finally relented, allowing Gilliam's cut to reach select theaters. The victory wasn't just personal. It proved that a determined filmmaker could outmaneuver corporate censorship, turning a battle over artistic vision into a rallying cry for creative freedom. Today, Brazil's legend is inseparable from the fight that brought it to the screen, and Gilliam's Variety ad stands as one of the boldest acts of director defiance in Hollywood history. Between 1982 and 1993, the UK government placed over 70 films on the Video Nasty list, including Extra and Turkey Shoot, leading to police raids and tape seizures. Across the Atlantic, RoboCop faced 11 rounds of edits before securing an R rating, while The Thing was banned in countries like Finland and Norway for its bleak outlook. Terry Gilliam's Brazil was blocked in both Hollywood and the Eastern Bloc, with the uncut version only released after a public campaign and critics' awards. Yet many original censorship documents remain classified or lost, making it impossible to track every decision or motivation. Today, most of these films are available uncut, but the exact criteria behind their bans are still debated by historians. What's clear is that censorship often fueled these movies' cult status, and the debates they sparked continue to shape how we view freedom of expression in film. The legacy of banned 80s sci-fi remains a testament to the enduring power and controversy of cinema.